Thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you for having us.
What are your names and where are you from?
Davey Yarborough, Washington, D.C.
I'm Esther Williams Yarborough, and I'm from Waukegan, Illinois.
Davey, let's start with you as a native Washingtonian. Where in the city did you grow up and what time period was it?
What time period? Well, I was born in 1953, and my first home that I can recall was 2410 Hartford Street. It's an apartment complex, and that I have very little memory of. But one of the things I can see the building itself, and we used to pick blackberries in the alley.
And where was the
The,
apartment building?
that was
In what
20.
neighborhood?
Yeah, that was Southeast.
And Esther, where did you grow up in Waukegan?
I grew up on the south side of Waukegan. Waukegan's a small, I like to call it a big town. It's not a small city, but it's a big town, and it's a lot of military there. Great Lakes is right near there. I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood. Lots of a mixture of Hispanics, Greek, Armenians. There were a lot of different folks I grew up with.
Did you both grow up in musical households? Did you?
My mom played a little piano. My dad was just a natural singer, but that was about it. I'm the only one that actually went to pursue it further than, novice.
Kind of the same for me, except that I found out once I was an adult that my father was part of a singing group with his brothers. And when I was growing up, he taught me harmony. We used to sing together all the time, but I just thought he just liked to sing. He never really told me, that he had really done it for the church, and they went around, did the chitlin circuit and that kind of thing.
David, you talked about Hartford Street. Where else did you move to in the city?
We moved to Northwest. North Dakota Avenue, which is about 3 blocks long in Northwest and 1 block long in Northeast. And if thinking that I'm talking to somebody who's from the area, I grew up in the Coolidge area. As a matter of fact, all of the schools that I went to were in walking distance until college.
That's Coolidge High School.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Whittier Elementary, Paul Junior High, Rabeau Junior High, Coolidge High.
Did you begin to pursue music while you were in
I
grade school, or?
I was somewhat self-taught through. One of the good things about the district then was they had orchestras in all of the schools, but I didn't take any private lessons, so I was sort of self-taught in learning while I was watching what was going on until I got to college.
And Esther, what was music? Did you pursue music
I
in grade school
was
too, or what was it?
I was in choirs, and I was always singing with my friends, always figuring out harmonies and singing the Motown songs because that's the soundtrack of my youth. I I did all the talent shows, performed in all the talent shows. So we always had a group that we sang with, and I had a group at church called the Trinettes. The name of the church was Trinity, so we were the Trinettes.
You talked about your parents having some musical engagement. What was, did you listen to the radio or records? What kind of musical environments did you grow
Yeah.
up beyond kind of your parents?
Well, I think it was the records. I think it was the records that I listened to. I got in trouble when I was a kid with in the house, of course. My parents had bought a new stereo unit, a Grundig, German Grundig, and they called it a combination. And I was told not to touch it when they weren't home. Of course, you know how we are.
So you're talking about the Green Day.
Yeah. So, of course, when they went to work, I would go in the basement and turn it on, and they had a lot of records, and that's how I really got to the point of enjoying music. Till one day my mom came home and saw that when you turn the stereo off, you had to turn the turntable off and the stereo. Well, I turned the stereo off, but I didn't turn the turntable off, so I got in a little trouble there. But when I really decided that I was interested,
What were your parents? What was in your parents' record?
everything, and that's I mean, John Coltrane to Andy Williams. I mean, it was just it was whatever they thought was everything was popular back then. So I mean that they listened to, but all the various styles were popular. When I got in the third grade, I got my first record when I was in the third grade. I was in North Carolina. My aunt was in school. And when she would go to school, she had a little combination, not a combination, a little stereo unit in her room. And I would go in and play her records. And then she came home and saw. And so she said, look, I don't mind you playing the records, but I'm going to give you your own. And this is where I really fell in love with music. There was one of the first stereophonic records, RCA, was called Sounds in Space. And it was a collection, eclectic collection that had a little bit of everything. It had big band, it had orchestras, it had, I think Donna Washington was on there, and it was a lot of stuff. But it was gorgeous music, and of course it was in the stereo sound, and I could hear so many different approaches to music. And in elementary school at that time, Constitution Hall used to house the rehearsals for the National Symphony. And we would go on field trips to that. And Benjamin Britten's Listener's Guide to the Orchestra, it was one of the pieces that they played, and I got to hear all of the instruments. And I had a friend who played clarinet as well, by the way. After I heard what the clarinet sounded like, I said, oh man, I like that. And then he got one. I went home and told my dad I wanted a clarinet. And that's what started, and my dad got it, and that's what started my pursuit, really, of music.
And when did you switch to saxophone?
Oh,
Or pick up saxophone?
I took up saxophone in high school. I had a girlfriend, and I broke up with her, and her friends didn't like the idea that I broke up with her, and one of her friends snuck into the coat room, and I found this out later, by the way, took the clarinet out of the case except for one piece and dropped it out the window of the school. So I'm going home, and I said, my case feels sort of light. Opened up my case, and there was nothing left but the barrel. And I never knew what happened all the way up, and I guess when I got to college, and I ran into that particular friend, and he said, did you ever wonder what happened to your clarinet? Do you know I went back to Coolidge and looked out that window, it was still there, in shattered pieces, but it was still there. So that was a story. But what happened was, my dad said, well, I bought the first one. I'm not buying anymore. So I worked at Arby's for $1.10 an hour for the summer.
The fast food chain?
Yep. Arby's roast beef. And after the summer, I raised $400. And I decided that I wanted to play saxophone. I'm going to choose the instrument. And I noticed that the saxophone players got solos and, girls.
And girls.
So
More on that later.
right. So anyway, Dale Music, which is no longer here, but I went up there and they had a Selmer saxophone for sale for $400. And my dad said, well, I'll loan you the other 25 so you can get it and have it for school. But it's a loan that I paid back. And I still have that horn.
So you were born in 53.
Yep.
What year was I born in?
Yes.
What? 50. I'm 75 years old.
So can you talk about 1968, obviously
Yeah.
hugely impactful in the course of DC history. I'm less familiar with Waukegan, but
I was here.
oh wow.
I moved here in '68.
So can you talk about what brought you to DC then first?
Well, I had two sisters who were here, and I had already visited here twice, and I had already kind of met some music community people, and I knew I wanted to be a performer. I knew I wanted to sing. So under the auspices of coming to school, Howard, I spent some time there, a little bit of time there. But I hooked up with the music community, and I wound up recording, found a recording company, recording contract, joined a singing group, joined some bands, worked with some funk bands, some R&B bands, did a lot of different things. Regarding I don't think I talked to you about where my music came from, where I got my
Yeah.
music start from. Well, my sisters, I had siblings who were older than me, so they were Bobby Soxing and they had 45s. So I knew. It's really funny because even now I know a lot of songs of older people because they were 10. Some of them were 10. One of my sisters was 20 years older than me. So I was listening to what she was listening to. So that's how I got my education, so to speak, of and my immersion in music. And there was a woman up the
What
street.
were they listening to?
They were listening to all of the R&B and the pop stuff. I don't know if you know the Bobby Sox era, but you know they were listening to stuff to dance with. You know, sock hop stuff. You know, the kind of stuff that they did at the sock hops. And then Mrs. Penny up the street had a huge collection of jazz, and she saw something in me, and she didn't have anybody else to play it with. So I would go up there and she'd play her jazz, and we would listen, and that's when I got exposed to Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae, the Basie Orchestra. She loved Prysock, you know. So I had a wide range of interests, and my brother was a rocker. He liked rock music, and I listened. If I was in the car with him, that's what I was stuck listening to.
It's like Elvis and Bill Haley or like
No,
Richard.
AC/DC.
Oh,
Yeah,
later.
yeah, he was a rocker. Yeah, yeah.
So could you, and then you went to Howard for a little bit?
I went to Howard for a little bit, but I didn't enroll in Howard until later. I went to Howard, but during that time I was there on the campus, engaging with the musicians and doing that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of partying going on. I was part of that. And I met a lot of music people, not just through Howard, just somehow I hooked up with a network of people who were doing the music. And,
Along U Street, presumably.
pardon me?
Along U Street? Or just everywhere?
Just everywhere. It was funny. You know, I don't know how it happened. I didn't spend that much time on U Street. I really didn't. I sang with different groups. There was a group called Osiris. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I sang with Trouble Funk. There a lot of different groups. I knew a lot of musicians. I was a funketeer in terms of hanging out with the Funkadelic. And I just kind of started carving my niche, and people would call me for gigs. And then I started doing studio work, background work for different musicians. And there was a recording studio in Silver Spring called D&B. Was that Jose Williams?
Yeah.
Studio, yeah, it was a
Yeah,
studio where
D&B.
the one that everybody used. And
There
I
was a
wound
couple.
up,
There's another one, Track Studio.
Yeah.
D&B and Track were up
yeah,
there.
yeah, and I worked in both of them. So sometimes they'd say, well, we need background singers. And I'd pull together some singers and we'd do the background work for them. People like Winfield Parker, I can't even think, Dr. Soul, and a lot of different people we did a lot of recordings for. And that's how I got a recording contract, because somebody heard me on somebody else's music.
Go talk about your experience of 1968.
68 when I moved here. I moved here in 68 realizing that I was moving to DC in 68. But we had our own, uprisings in Illinois too.
Sure.
I couldn't believe how the city was torn up. And then I had a cousin who was in the National Guard in Chicago and was sent here just before I moved here. That's kind of poignant right now, isn't it? Just before I moved here. So he was here when I first moved here. I didn't see him at all when he was here. And it was kind of a volatile time. I don't think I was ever really afraid. I think I was an outsider, not from the area. So even now, I had no boundaries on where I would go. And natives sometimes stayed in their quadrants. And I never did. I had friends everywhere, and I can't remember ever feeling fearful.
68 was when I bought my saxophone. And I was sort of like Esther, having relatives in Southeast as well as in Northeast and Northwest. I walked all over the city. This is before that time and not really had any issues. There were street gangs and neighborhood gangs. And my home was in sort of like a no man's land. So once folks got to know me, I could move around, pretty comfortably. But I learned, as you were walking, I said, people look at you a little strange and, oh yeah, what are you doing here? And also the music, I think, really helped a lot as well, because in 68, 2 weeks after I got the saxophone, I was recruited to a band. The band was called The Delusion. It was, rhythm and blues band. And we played we played the popular music. By the way, where I lived was close to WOOK, which was where Tina Dance Party, which they played all the Motown hits, all of the rhythm and blues things. My brother actually, yep, my brother actually danced on that show. But then the bands that were playing at that time, the Camaros, the Esquires, the El Corals, the Young Senators, and the Soul Searchers, of
Soul
course.
Searchers.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned neighborhood gangs. There are also neighborhood bands.
Neighborhood bands,
Yeah,
right? And
they were.
we used to play the same circuits: the Knights of Columbus, the Masonic Temple, Shelter Room,
10th and K,
That was Knights of Columbus.
Burn
yeah.
Manor.
And then the U Street corridor, the Room, Excalibur. There were several clubs that were popular clubs, and then the jazz clubs were there too, and that's where I ended up migrating to. The Delusion Band was a rhythm and blues type band. As a matter of fact, if you know the song "Just Don't Want to Be Lonely," John Freeman was the leader of that group, who actually recruited me into that group. And
He wrote that song.
who wrote, yeah, just
Co-wrote it.
right. And then from there, when just as I was graduating from high school, we started another group called the Sons of Nature, and both of these groups recorded. And the Delusion recorded with a vocal group called the Levations, and there was a recording studio on New Hampshire Avenue and 14th.
Which one was that?
Oh, in Georgia.
You remember?
Part three.
There was a recording studio in there?
In the back. That's where Joe Tate,
I'm
the
learning
saxophone. And this town had so many musical artists and musical outlets. I mean,
true.
it seemed like there was a nightclub on every corner. and
And all of them had music.
and with live music.
Live.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
live music,
yep.
yeah.
My high school band director, who actually just passed a couple of weeks ago, Jesse Adams, used to play at this club called, what's the one on First Street? Jackie Lee's Lounge. And so he was a B3 player. And that's just another important part of my life. But as a matter of fact, Keith Kilgo and I went to Coolidge together, and we were students of Jesse
Jesse's.
Adams.
For the me stating for the record, Keith Kilgo, drummer for the Blackbirds.
For the Blackbirds, yes.
And the leader of the Black
and leaders group,
Yes.
yeah. And he was actually responsible for really, because they were playing more jazz. There was a little trio there in high school that was playing more jazz than the rhythm and blues. And hanging out with him is where I got to really know the U Street Quarter. His father, Harry Kilgore, used to play on U Street, and it took me down to one of those clubs, and that's where I fell
Where
into
did his
that.
father play?
Huh?
Where did his father play?
If I could find this place, it was called the Brown Jug. It was across the street from Lincoln Theater and Ben's Chili Bowl and the Casbah, which was before that the Jungle Inn. But Reconstruction and everything that
Can't
left.
even-
Yeah. So, but I cannot find any history on the Brown Jug. But that's where I looked in and saw his father playing the organ, and that BC sound hit me, and I was hooked from there. You see, there's a lot going on in this 68 area. When the riots happened, I was on 7th Street on the bus coming back from Olympic, was the sports place. And I had bought my roller skates there, and I was on the bus, and that's when somebody had one of those little transistor radios, and they announced that Martin Luther King had been killed. By the time I got up to my neighborhood, the fires had already started, the looting and everything. When I got out off the bus at Sheridan, Georgia Avenue and Sheridan, there was a men's shop there, and folks were coming out of, it was on fire, and folks were coming out, the glasses were broken, all of that. And I can vividly see everything from that point, right to the point of at Coolidge, the tanks and everything came, and my neighborhood smelled like tear gas for the next month or two. That's another. I told that story to some of my students, and because none of them really knew, about that.
Of course not.
Yeah, and I realized how much of the history they didn't know about.
After you graduated, where did you go to Howard, or where did you end up going to?
I got Bobby Felder, who was like a staple in this town. My parents danced to his music, the Blue Notes. Bobby Felder and the Blue Notes.
Blue Notes.
Brought.
Him in the first series we did.
Oh, okay, okay.
Bobby.
I worked with Bobby too.
Well, he brought.
Let's talk about Bobby. Like what?
Yeah, he brought an entertainment package. He had a big band that did all types of music too, and he brought them from Federal City College to Coolidge, and that was the first time I saw a live big band.
Big band.
And he came up to me. We played for them, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in a full scholarship to Federal City College?" And I had a partial scholarship to Maryland University, and of course, I knew my parents would love to hear that, and I wanted to be a musician anyway. So anyway, I got the scholarship to Federal City College. So Bobby became a mentor, and that's where I met probably the most influential art teacher that I had, even though I had the ones that were in the school, but I didn't really spend as much time with them as I did, because he told me if I didn't learn how to read, I was going to lose my scholarship. Dr. Arthur Dawkins is a PhD in educational psychology, which I needed somebody like that. But he actually, saxophone was considered and is still sometimes considered a illegitimate instrument. I heard that a lot. So when my first semester, he allowed me to major in saxophone. But the second semester, he said, "Okay, well, the good news is you passed. You can stay. You keep your scholarship. Bad news is, now, or if that's the way you want to look at it, is that we don't have a saxophone major, so you're now a flute major."
So that was Federal City or Howard?
That was just Federal City.
Okay.
And so I went and, I went to a pawn shop, bought a flute, and eventually he sold me one of his, because when I got through college, he said, okay, now, you need a real instrument if you're going to try to play in some of these orchestras. So he was purchasing a new one, and he sold me his old one, which was a very good flute, which I am playing to this day. As a matter of fact, he wanted to buy it back about 5 years later.
No, sir.
But that's where everything opened up, because he asked me when I decided that I wanted to major in music. He said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And he's doing contract work at Arena Stage, Ford Theater, subbing at the Kennedy Center, and he was doing recordings. We'll get to that later, because that's how we met. And I told him I wanted to do what he did. So he told me to put on some black shirt and black pants and meet him at Ford's Theater. And he said he wanted me to see what he did. And so he said, meet me down. We went down in the pit, and he pulled out about 8 instruments. And he read this show. The show was called Nonsense. And he said, okay, when he finished, he said, now, are you sure this is, what you want to do?
You're either going to be intimidated out or going to fall in love and go, yes.
Yes, exactly. So I said yes, and then that's where he introduced me to, doubling on different instruments, and then he started sending me out on jobs, and I'll stop.
It seems like such an important part of the mentorship. I mean, Chris
Huge,
Munn talks about his dad being the one to volunteer him to, oh, you need a bass player? Well, send Chris, he's 17, he has the real book, he can do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I got a chance to work with at Four Tops, at Temptations, at Spinners. I did shows at Arena Stage and things, and this was because he was the contractor and he would bring me in, and eventually he would let me subcontract for him. So I got a chance to see this full circuit of music. And then I joined the union, and that's where I got introduced to the booking agents and things like that, and the agencies. And
Did Federal City College have when you were studying music, was there even a jazz pathway?
oh, he was a jazz orchestra
Or was it
director.
still mostly classical? Okay.
And see, he was both. And that's probably the biggest blessing to me, was he would not allow me to do one or the other. He said, if you're going to do what I do, you're going to have to be a musician. So you're going to have to be able to move, throughout the styles.
Coltrane and Tchaikovsky.
That's right. Exactly.
So Esther, just to refer back, what were you doing at this kind of earlier period in the late 60s, early 70s?
Late 60s, early 70s, I was working with different bands. I was taking piano at the time from Marva Cooper. She was at Federal City. Actually, it was UDC by then, was it? No, it started at Federal City. It was,
You tell them about Bill Harris, though.
yeah, and I took guitar from Bill Harris. Yeah, and I was just trying to get my chops up, just so I know the music. I saw that singers weren't always respected, and I needed to, kind of know a little bit about how to navigate. And I worked with different people like Charlie Hampton. I had a long-term club gig with Charlie Hampton. That's actually where Dave and I met. Well, that we didn't meet on that gig. We wound up on that gig together. So I was tooling my way around, and I met someone who had a recording studio called Monka Records. His name was Smiley Nesbitt, and he had a recording studio up on Georgia Avenue. And we did some recording. The group was called the Chansonettes. And there was 3 women, and we did some traveling. We went along the East Coast, Poughkeepsie and New York and that kind of stuff. We had a tune called "I Almost Left You" that got a little bit of noise, but that group never really took off. And me and the 2 girls in the group, we got along real well, except that they weren't as serious as I was. So I knew someone stepped to me and said, "You need to step out, and go solo or something. You just got to figure it out yourself, because they don't want to do it as much as you do." So that was the kind of thing what I was doing. I sang with different bands. Bobby Felder, I was Miss Black D.C. in 1973.
Congratulations.
So long ago. I almost never mention it, but I'm mentioning it now because I met Bobby Felder during that period. And that's when he hired me to sing with his band. I started singing with his band for a while. I didn't do it too long. And then I went on tour with the Miss Black America tour, which kind of was a launching pad for my career, I would say. And then after that, I still was doing the studio stuff. And the Eddie Drennan. You familiar with Eddie Drennan? He's a writer and a violinist and a composer, arranger. He and Dawkins were really good friends, and that's kind of our connection. I will tell you about that as well. And I recorded all the vocals on 2 of Eddie Drennan's albums, all the background vocals, layered them and everything. He had a tune called "Let's Do the Latin Hustle" that was really big in New York, and I worked with them a lot up and down the East Coast mostly. Eddie Drennan is still around. And again, Bobby Felder, Eddie Drennan, and people would call me for gigs and I would do it. I was real brave back then because they would call me for gigs for music I really didn't know. And that is actually how I started singing more jazz because someone hired me for a jazz gig and I was like, okay, I'll do it. And it's not like I hadn't heard it. I just started listening and started singing more jazz.
Okay, how did you two meet?
Well, notice you heard the name Eddie Drennan and Bobby Felder and Art Dawkins.
Art Dawkins, yeah.
Well, they were good buddies. So, and a lot of times what would happen, you would do something and someone would say, okay, well, I need a sax over here. I need something over there. So Dr. Dawkins played flute on one of her recordings. And they had a gig at the Iranian embassy on New Year's Eve, and he couldn't make it. Yeah, and he couldn't make it. New Year, what was that? 76,
75, something like that.
Yeah,
It's probably about 75.
76.
The pre-revolution.
Yeah, and he couldn't make it, so that was one of the jobs he sent me to sub on. And so I go to the embassy for the rehearsal, and
Did we have a rehearsal that day?
that's how I got the, no, not that day, it was the day before, I believe.
I don't remember the rehearsal.
And I see this young lady who's gorgeous, and then I'm saying, oh, okay, take your mind off of that because Dr. Dawkins sent you on a job and to do that. So we got through rehearsal and everything. I'm gonna tell on her now. She had her hair was about that long
That's when my
then,
hair real short that time.
she had on this one-piece jumpsuit that fit very well. So like I said, then I had to play with blinders on to make sure I got the music straight. But we ended up doing the job, and on our way home, at the end of the job, she said, well, periodically I do need, a saxophone player. Can I give you, would you give me your number?
It wasn't quite like that.
That's the way it felt to me. Like, oh, yeah, that'll be easy here. So I gave her the number, and she called me a couple of weeks later. And
Do you remember what gig you were calling him for?
I was calling him for a gig we did at some church.
it was on Viersmore Road.
And it was like a cabaret. Back then, everybody did cabarets. You know how know what a DC cabaret is? A DC cabaret is a dance where they have a live band and there is food, and they had a BYOB or BYOF, bring your own food. The people would bring their own food, and they'd have the setups, and you pay to get in, and then there would be lots of dancing and the band playing. So that's what it was, wasn't it?
Mostly popular music back
Mostly
then.
popular music.
All music
And
was
R&B,
popular.
and
yeah, but
R&B,
mostly.
mostly R&B, because it was mostly black crowds we were dealing with during that
That
period.
was 76, that was like Sly.
Sterling right now, 77. Yeah, all of that, yeah.
All of that, Motown, Sly and the Family Stone, Philadelphia stuff, everything.
Her leader,
Fifth Dimension, huh?
her leader was Charlie Hampton, who was DC's Cannonball Adderley. You know, I mean, literally.
You familiar with that name, Charlie
Yeah,
Hampton?
and he was one of the conductors of the Howard Theater Band and whatever. But the group that they were playing, of course, did the cabaret music. And in the cabarets, you probably have a set of dinner jazz for when they were eating, and then the popular music would come after. So there you were doing a variety, and he was the leader of that, and he was I knew who he was, and I mean I wanted to study with him as well. Getting a chance to play on in a band with him was great, but he was playing keyboard, so I couldn't.
And he
get
was
there.
a phenomenal sax player
And flute player, yeah.
who didn't play it much at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He had kind of stopped playing it.
And you can go on from that to the next.
Oh, and then, okay, so we were with Charlie Hampton. I was on a long-term club gig at a club called Moore's Love and Peace. I don't know if you've heard that mentioned.
15th and Franklin.
15th and Franklin, in the same
Northeast.
quarter with the Pickfoot and Mr. Wise, same stretch.
Rhode Island. What was that? Rhode Island.
Rhode
Plaza?
Island, Northeast,
Plaza.
Rhode Island Plaza, that
yeah.
area over there, yeah. And we were there for the longest time. And then, did Charlie hire you for that gig?
Actually, you told Charlie to hire me, and he asked because he had just fired the saxophone player
Okay.
that was working with them, and he told me, he said, "Well, I had to let go of my saxophone player, and my vocalist, Esther Williams, mentioned that she had done a couple of jobs with you, and you know, would you like to come?" And I'm thinking, Charlie Hampton's asking me to come play saxophone in his band. And of course, fear. I mean, serious fear. So now I've got all kinds of fear. I said, how do I even focus on, and that's what I did. I focused, I said, whatever the music was, that's what my brain was going to be, and I was pray from there. And it lasted.
So we had that gig. Charlie was there, and then
Was that like, when you say it was a long-standing club gig, like weekly or like?
every
many
week,
days?
every week we were there. What,
Six
two,
night, I was there, we were there 6 nights a week, then we went to
six?
4.
Oh
Then
my
we went
God,
to
I
4.
remember. Oh God.
Well, what it was, I think you were 4, and Lincoln Ross and I were doing the double trouble on
Yeah,
Saturdays and
yeah.
Sundays.
Yeah. And then there was another group, Artie Sherman, and then we're doing something on Sundays. But yeah, there were long gigs and long hours. You know, like we'd start at 10 and we didn't get up
Till 2:30.
2:30.
No, 10 to 10 to 2:30. That's right.
10 to
That's right.
2:30.
And they would close. They would close the club. Remember?
What?
So we would go after hours. You know, so they would lock the door and.
Then people who were still there could stay and we'd still be there. You know, yeah. Not making any more money, but we were there.
Oh,
And
people were tipping generously.
Sometimes.
sometimes they did, yeah. Never any shortage of drinks. That's for sure. So we did that gig, and then I got a recording contract, and I was in New York most of the time, and they held the gig down for me. A couple of singers. Who did I get that gig to? Who subbed for me? Natai. You familiar with somebody named Natai?
Deirdre Natai.
And then there were a couple of singers.
Not Donna. What was the lady whose mother sang to?
Andrea Cross.
Andrea Cross, right?
Andrea Cross. These are singers who were doing things back then, and they subbed for me when I was in New York recording my albums, and we were able to hold on to that gig. That was a big deal, holding on to that gig. Now the owner of the club, Mr. Moore, he was a character, Robert Moore, and he would tell me every time somebody would come in and try to take the job. He'd say, "Oh, you see that person over there? Trying to get your gig."
Who did you have the recording contract with?
Friends and Company in New York, Friends and Company, and then I wound up recording for RCA. I recorded an album for RCA too, all through Friends and Company and what was the name of it? There was another subsidiary who
Bullseye Music.
Bullseye
Yeah.
Music, yeah.
Hey, I remember it. Okay, good.
Funny, you remember it and I didn't. So we came back. We came back to the club. I came back. They were still there. He was kind of holding it down. And then after I came off the road, and we would go off. He kept us because we kept the club popping.
Yeah, we had a clientele that
Yeah.
came from out of town on a
Yeah,
regular
yeah.
basis.
And Shirley
Yeah.
Horn used to come into
Yeah.
the club after she got off of her gig
And bring all kinds of
and
people.
bring people. Oh, she did.
Yeah, she
Where
bring
Shirley's going, everyone.
Oh, yeah, she brought
Mark Murphy, Ahmad Jamal.
Ahmad Jamal, what was the
Brother
saxophone player?
Jack
what's his
Jack
name?
McDuff came in.
Yeah, we used to, a lot of people used to come to that
Oh,
club.
yeah. And she lived not. She didn't live
She
far
lived
from
very
there, so
near
it was
there.
on the way. On the
Yeah,
way
but she
home.
came almost every week. She came, and she was just so cool and so giving of somebody who was learning.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's when I started doing things with her as well. She just sort of like adopted. You know, and she used to call me
She
Little
did.
Davey.
She did. She was funny like that. She was really good.
And I think Bobby applied a gig, had some kind of long-standing gig with her, didn't he?
Bobby
Felder.
Felder. That was I think they did things at that's what I was talking about, the Rhode Island Plaza, because that's where Bobby started playing.
And maybe at Bobby's place, Northwest Gardens.
At Northwest Garden, yes.
Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah,
Did
had
you
a
know
club.
about that? Bobby owned.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he talked about it.
I think he was also talking about they did something for a military gig at an officers' club somewhere.
Yeah, because he was Air Force, retired Air Force. Yeah, Bobby got a whole. I played in Bobby's bands for years as well, but a lot of folks got more exposure in D.C. because of Bobby.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
I worked with him back then, but then I came to work with him again in the 80s, 90s. Yeah, 80s and 90s as well.
How are obviously you're known as jazz musicians now, kind of the Oral History Project is about jazz musicians, but over those, are you still all, during the 70s, 80s, 90s, are you playing
Oh, yeah.
popular music? Or, what's how's
Playing
the
everything.
economy changing?
When disco hit, and I would say that
I
was
was
the
a
biggest
disco diva. That's
Yeah.
what I was doing in New York.
in New York.
Just for the record.
But we were when it was cabaret, it was a nice mix because, like I said, we would do the first hour playing standards and just dinner music is what they called it. But we would just be playing, learn. That's why I was getting my chops on the jazz standards, and then we do the dance music afterwards. When disco hit, a lot of those clubs turned into disco clubs.
So you
I
played-
did want to talk a little bit about the transition from the cabaret things, because and those cabarets turned into go-go clubs. The Knights of Columbus and Masonic Temple, Smokey Robinson's Going to a Go-Go was out. Charlie was working at the Howard Theater as director, but when the record came out, Going to a Go-Go, album cover, the girls on dancing girls with the go-go boots and all of that. Well, that started happening in the cabarets. The bands coming in would bring
Playing.
go-go. I played with several bands. They had go-go girls and whatever, and we were playing Going to a Go-Go and all of that. Eventually, those groups became, because the Soul Searchers and all those others, they were all bands that played at the go-go, so they became go-go bands, and that's where go-go evolved.
Yeah. And Smokey Robinson's Going to a, it just happened that it was Smokey Robinson saying Going to a Go-Go. In D.C., it meant a whole nother thing.
Right.
It meant the go-go music. Yeah. And
That there was a
yeah.
crossing of destiny.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I did everything. And when we came back to the club, we did what the people in the club wanted to hear. R&B. I said R&B first, but it wasn't always just R&B. It was jazz and R&B. And I did very little of I can't say I did any of my disco music. When I was working in New York, I did the disco music. That's what I did. And then I came down here and did the other. So had a wide range of what I was doing.
I'm also just curious, because I know Davey, we interviewed you for the documentary short on Blackfire. Yeah, at
Right,
the same time,
right.
mid '70s, you're having, the Archie Sheps and the kind of post culture, and you're having, and Pharoah Sanders and a lot of this
Right.
very politically, spiritually minded music, and obviously what Plunky and Jimmy Gray, Jimmy Gray were doing. What was your intersection like? What was both of you? What was your intersections like with?
That's the
yeah.
same era. Yeah.
You have Gil Scott and Brian Jackson over here. You have Plunky and Jimmy Gray over here. You have all these.
And it was, again, so much going on here in D.C. Pharoah Sanders had out The Creator Has a Master Plan album, and that I played that thing till it turned white. and Roland Kirk, and because of the U Street Corridor and the Howard Theater, everybody would come. You had Les McCann who discovered Roberta Flack at Mr. Henry's. Well, there was a Stanley Woodruff and Sandy Patton. So there was a little bit of everything and every type. As a matter of fact, 3 members of the Sons of Nature, which was the rhythm and blues type group that I was in, but we also patterned ourselves out of the style of Earth, Wind and Fire. We actually toured opening, for them. But 3 of them. Huh? Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, it was Sons of Nature, Rare Earth, and Earth, Wind and Fire. That was the group that played at the Carter Barron, which launched my musicians union career. At the union, that's why I paid my union dues and went out on the road with them. So that's what I was saying. It was everything that was here, and I remember Plunky coming up from Virginia. And I remember the Oneness of Juju, and we never played together. And there's a lot. I mean, we're talking, you think about Ron Holloway, who is from this area as well. And Ron and I didn't get to play together till way late in our careers.
And I worked with Ron for a period when he was playing with Osiris.
Yeah.
I was
I think
saying.
you mentioned.
Yeah, but see, the musicians, if somebody recommended you, you didn't care what kind of music it was. You just, well, that's where you.
You weren't pigeonholed.
You learned.
That's right.
Yeah,
You were saying with the jazz stuff.
with the jazz stuff.
You were saying that
That's how you
didn't
learn
know
this.
a lot of it. But
No, I didn't, but yeah, I was kind of thrown into it, and I did it. And then people started calling me a jazz singer. I'm like, I'm not a jazz singer. Jazz singer Esther Williams. They talking about me? So I had such a wide range of stuff that I was doing, but I just didn't think I didn't think you could call me a jazz singer. And I also didn't want to be called a jazz singer because I didn't want to miss out on the other gigs.
you don't want to be pigeonholed.
Yes, absolutely.
When did you start teaching at Ellington?
1977, actually.
Oh, wow. So
I was just graduating,
in the
graduating.
midst of all these
I was
gigs
still
and whatever you were.
oh yeah,
day job.
I didn't want to leave town because I had being introduced by Dr. Dawkins to all of the various things that were going on in the city. I did my student teaching at Ellington in '77 under Wallace Clark. I was the orchestra director. But when I started, once I graduated, my work changed, and I got married the same year.
So eventually, after enough gigs together, you started going out. And
Right.
That was after a while though, because when we got married, I was
She was on the
gone.
road. Yeah,
she was where?
she was on the road. She was.
I went on the road right after we got married
I
for a
didn't go
good
on,
little
on
while.
the road. I had parents that said, "You want to finish school?"
78, the year we got married. I was working with Eddie Drennan, and then I had a record that was pretty hot in the disco clubs. So I did the clubs, and I worked up that way in Miami, and I did a lot of that work.
By that time, Dr. Dawkins had gotten me connected. So I taught at Ellington. It just so happened that my planning period was just before lunchtime, which was perfect because I could leave, go play a matinee at the theater, come back, finish my class
Make
at
it
5
work.
o'clock.
Make it work.
And this was going on in my senior year. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Judy
Oh,
Corey,
senior year
at Fellow City, which is UDC
Yeah.
by then, would give me the key to her classroom so I could do my theory homework before I left and went to the theater. And then I would leave the theater. There was a club out in the Southeast called the Camelot. So I would finish the show at the theater at 9:30, and at 10:30 I was out at the Camelot playing from 10:30 to 2:30. And then I'd turn around and I'd be back at school
Hustling.
at 7 o'clock.
Hustling,
So
that's
when
what,
somebody said, come on,
And we wonder why you students get there
at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Fines if they weren't on time.
Yeah, it worked. It worked.
yeah, because he did it
But
himself.
it also kept me grounded here in town too, because when I was doing shows, the shows would say, "Hey, come on, you hit the road with us." But I said, "Well, if I leave these other jobs to go do this one job that's not paying with all these, no, it doesn't work." So
He realized that the network was worth staying for, I would say.
Yeah.
True. And then he went out a few times.
yeah, I mean, I'd go out on tours, but I'd come back. I do it in between holidays and the summer.
Great tradition of musicians like Buck Hill who never left.
Well,
Right,
Buck was
right.
another one of my mentors.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and I worked. So that was the other thing. The artists would give you jobs. The
That's
first
true.
job that when we were working we worked at Moore's Love and Peace for 11 years. But within that time frame, there was an organist, another Hammond B3 organist, because you see that and I'm ready to run. And there was a Hammond B3 at Moore's Love and Peace. Well, Sedatrix had a job in the Southeast at a place called Manny's on South Capitol and Atlantic Street, Southeast. And she left. So she called me and said, because we had been working together. Matter of fact, you can find on YouTube us playing in Italy. But she was leaving that job. And she said, look, you can start your own trio. You come on out here. Now, I'm working with her, but we were just friends. We had not made any real commitments to each other than as musicians. But when I got ready to leave there, that's when we started dating. And I went out and worked out there for almost a year. And then by that time we had started dating, and I would leave that job at 1:30 and pick her up when she was finished at 2:30, and then we'd date till the sun came up. So eventually we decided, well, I don't need to be out here that long anymore. So I cut that job loose and came back and
And
worked
then we
with them.
started our own band. Then we kind of started
Right.
working our own band, booking ourselves. And during that time also,
No, everything. Everything.
everything.
Everything.
During
We
that
would-
time also, I was doing theater. I was doing, did some things at the Ford's Theater. I did a tour of 2 or 3 tours of Ain't Misbehaving.
The Fats Armies.
Yes, absolutely. So, we just mixed it up. I did it all, and it was good for us, I think.
Yeah, it was. And it gave us again exposure on
Lots
a lot
of
of
levels.
platforms, but it also gave us recognition in terms of being musicians in D.C.
Very grounded, very well known, established.
And so, like I said, I got a chance to work with Buck. Buck, actually, I met him. I was on my way to a recording session at DB Studios in Silver Spring, and the bus wasn't coming fast enough, and I was going to be late, so I figured I'd hail a cab, and that's where I met Buck. His cab stopped. I got in. I knew who Buck Hill was from the World Book Encyclopedia. There's that picture that you see on 14th Street was whoever the mural.
Yeah.
They took the picture from the World Book, but in the World Book Encyclopedia, his name is not listed. It just says the Wailing Postman. But that's where I knew his face, and then of course I met him through Charlie Hampton and the rest of them. But anyway, he picks me up. We talk all the way up to the studio, and I still don't know that that's him because I'm in the back, and we just having a conversation. He saw my alto case, and when I got out, I said, my name is Davey Yarborough, and he stopped. And then I looked at him, he said, my name is Buck Hill, and you could have bought me for a penny. But we had been friends from that point on.
So you had started teaching at Ellington in '77. When did you take over the jazz program?
Okay, that happened in '84. No, in '84 I came back to Ellington because I was at Ellington, because those were Ronald Reagan years, and he cut teaching hours out, and of course I was last hired, first fired, and so I sold pianos for a little while. I did quite a few different things while I had been hired at Ellington when I did my student teaching. That job ended. I had, a break from that, but and then I started teaching at Woodson Junior High. Then I went from Woodson Junior High to teaching at UDC. And while I was at UDC doing that, I was approached to become an attendance counselor for the DCPS. And I did that at Ellington and at the School Without Walls. And one day, the superintendent came up, who knew I was a musician, see me playing, whatever.
I was gonna say, so you're doing this during the day while
And still playing at night.
He taught driver's ed too at Wilson.
Yeah, I told you I was in there. I forgot about that. I was waiting. Mr. Pappas we were waiting for him to retire. And one of my friends who was a trombone player got me a temporary job there teaching driver's ed because one of the guys had gotten sick. And so, but of course, Pappas didn't retire. So as things progressed and things got around, one day I'm at Ellington as a counselor, and Floretta McKenzie comes up and says, "Why are you not teaching music?" And I said, "Well," and I gave her the full story. She said, "Well, I really want you to go back to the music." So McKinley Tech had closed, and had closed the music major program. She said, "I want you to revive the music major program at McKinley." Well, she said that in front of the principal at Ellington. And he said, "Well, if he's going to go back into music, I want him to come here." And I'm like,
Who was the principal at that time?
Maurice Eldridge.
Maurice Eldridge.
let the bidding war begin.
And I looked at her and she said, "I saw the fear on your face. So look, I don't care where you go as long as you go back to the music." And so Maurice is like, "Okay, that's cool." Then he stopped. He said, "But I don't have any more slots for teachers." And she looked at him and said, "You do now." And so that's when my job was created. And I was hired as the saxophone teacher and the jazz band director. And I said, well, and I told Mr. Eldred then, I said, "Well, look, this needs to be a part of the curriculum. This
Well,
can't
that
be
was the
after school."
jazz band that wasn't. You started the jazz band.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the kids were, and there were guys who were there who played. Mike Bass, who was Mike Malone's cousin, his bass player, played with Train, played with a whole bunch, lived in New York. He would come down after school and teach guys like Wallace Roney, Clarence C., Wallace and Anton, Chuck Royal. He would teach them jazz after school. But I told him, I said, "This has to be a part of the curriculum. I can't, this is music just like everything else. So I really want this to be a part of the entire."
jazz band.
Yeah, the jazz band to be a part of the actual daytime curriculum. So that it's just, I always said that arts were just as academic as math, and because music is math, by the way.
You a musician?
And he agreed. He agreed, so he allowed me to start the jazz studies program.
What was jazz education like at?
Well, first I felt like I was invisible. And when I got up on the third floor where the music department was, the room that they gave me it opened the door up and there were chairs and desks, but no musical instruments. And they said, well, the mindset of the heads of the department was saying, well, first of all, the school ran from back then officially 9 to 5, because I changed that when I got there. Then it became 8:15 to 5, and that was it. So that's when I moved my class up to 7 o'clock. But they said, well, the arts would be after school. So the kids are not going to stay. The arts, they're not going to stay. They're going to leave at 3 o'clock. And so I made my class the 3 o'clock class that started at 3 o'clock on 3:30 or whatever, it was at that time. And sure enough, they came, but I had drummers and they had to play air drums. And it was Joe Williams and Wynton Marsalis made donations so I could buy some musical instruments, and I bought a lot of the band instruments that way. And we had a little help because I'd gotten stuff from Wynton and Joe Williams.
How did you know Wynton and Joe?
Well, working with Sedatress, we did Fort DuPont with Joe Williams, and Shirley did that show. And so that's where I actually got a chance to talk to him. And John Malachi was playing piano for Joe Williams.
Yeah.
And I knew John because I played with him, in various clubs. So Wynton, Gail Dixon, who was a serious advocate. I don't know if you knew, you haven't been here long, you probably weren't here long enough to know Gail. Gail was a child advocate, a jazz advocate, a vocalist. Her husband was a trombone player, Green. He wasn't for me. I never met him. But
I
the bottom
never
line,
met her husband either.
she was just in
She was in everything,
in
and
everything
she knew
that was
everybody.
jazz, right? And she asked me, would you like to have? Because Wynton was 18.
She was a
She said,
kid.
would you like to have him come up and talk to your kids? I'm like, yeah. He says, okay, well, you have to go down and pick him up at the train station. I'll get him here, and I'll bring him over. I'll come and pick him up and take him, to dinner or whatever. But that was how we met. So we got a chance to talk from the train station to Ellington. He gave one of the greatest clinics you ever want to see, even at that age. And it was perfect for my class because he was 18 and they were
16.
14. They were. I said, here's a guy your age, around your age, and this is what he's doing, and this is where you want to go. And if you do that, because he had the two albums, he had the two Grammy albums out, the classical and the jazz, which would fit perfect with what we were trying to do, at Ellington.
And
from
going
that,
back to Arthur Dawkins doing like you have to do both.
yeah, exactly. And he talked that that was his language as well. And from there, Wynton came back every year
At least.
for at least 20 years. And he would come, and wherever the band orchestra would play, he'd get me tickets. I could take the whole band to watch the concerts, and he was very supportive. He got Sid Harmon to pledge $50,000 to help build our sound system at the school, and he just did what he has always done. He's had such a major impact on jazz and jazz education and music education and on and on and on and on. So
And he agreed to be on our advisory board for the
when I-
Washington Jazz
yeah,
Arts
when we started
Institute.
the Washington Jazz Arts Institute,
And I don't know if you know, he came and gave a free concert for us in 2018.
was that my birthday or the graduate or retirement?
2018 or
18, that was
19.
it
One was 2018, yours was
Yeah.
2019.
Right.
He gave a free concert.
Came from the Marciac,
We've been talking to, David had been talking to his manager,
Ed.
Rendell, and there was never any space, because he's
His schedule was booked
And,
3 years in
and
advance,
then he found the space, and they told us, we can do this. All you have to pay is for the musicians.
To come down from
And we got them rooms. It was
Yeah, I had a-
amazing. It was the biggest boost to our organization. And, people were like, they got Wynton Marsalis? We packed our church,
Where was the
People's Congregational Church. That's our church, church we go to, which has a vibrant jazz program there too.
But he has been, and he's helped launch so many of the careers of so many of my students. Last year when he was here, and I didn't know this until I got to the concert, walking out on the stage, and you've heard this name, Ekep Nkweli. Well, she walks out on the stage singing for him. And I remember when she went to Juilliard for grad school, and she had met him by then and whatever. But the bottom line is, I didn't know that he had incorporated her into.
And she went to
part of this.
Ellington
Yeah.
as
I
well.
was gonna say how many. What are some of the great students you've talked to have gone to?
And
Uh,
then
let's
there,
see.
Many in the jazz.
and then don't forget how many of them came through WJAI as well.
Most,
Oh,
yeah,
we'll go with
most
that.
of them, most of them. But so, I mean, Salim, Corcoran Holt, Ben Williams, Eric Wheeler, Janelle Gill, Amy Bormett,
Cherie.
Cherie Mitchell. Well, Cherie was Ellington, and as a matter of fact, that
But
was
he said
yeah,
Ellington.
yeah.
Cherie Mitchell.
She once he came and saw and talked to them and heard them play, he would make opportunities for them to go see their group play or to feature them. Albert Strong, he's in North Carolina now, but this is one of my favorite stories. He said, you can bring Albert to this concert and tell him to bring his trumpet. And I said, okay. So when I told him, he said, I'm going to bring a trumpet to the. I said, man, he might give you a lesson. And but what actually happened, he said, he sat him on the front row, and somewhere within the show, he called him up to the stage to play with him.
That cool.
And, but just watching him work with, and in fact, we did, when Winton did Echoes of Harlem at National Public Radio, when they were rehearsing, Roberto Perez was another one of my trumpet players. That was his idol, So I arranged for Winton to give him a lesson after this. I'm thinking after this recording session, because he was doing another recording session. He stopped the recording in the middle. When we got there, he was in the middle of the recording session. He stopped the recording session, gave him an hour lesson. And I'm watching the producers and everything. They were going crazy. He said, man, I'll get there. That's just
This
how
is
he
studio
was.
time.
Yeah. And then when he finished, he went back to finishing up.
Great story of a couple of high schoolers from Chicago interviewing Louis Armstrong before one of his gigs, and they're writing for their high school paper, and there are these other reporters from the big newspapers being like, Mr. Armstrong, he's like, do you mind, I'm in the middle of an interview.
Talking to the kids.
Yeah.
So when did the two of you founded the Washington Jazz Arts Institute?
1970.
No, 1998.
98. Oh,
1998.
70 is when we got married.
Yeah.
98. So we've
Yeah.
been doing it.
What was the vision, and what did you want to do with the organization?
Well, it started with Anthony Nash was a visual artist at Ellington. Oh, I mean, this guy, so talented. He got a scholarship to the Art Institute in New York, and in his first year, he came home for the summer and was killed. He had gotten in, and at that point, I was still counseling. And I had counseled him before he left, but I was doing the jazz band when he came back. But while I was counseling, I took training. I'm a trainer of trainers of substance abuse awareness, so I could see substance abuse evidence, but I had not dealt with trafficking, and he had been involved in trafficking. And after that, one of my drummers, George Rowe, is a drummer, great drummer, and he was killed over in Southeast. And I don't know exactly what it was, but it was street related. And I decided I just didn't want to come back to school after the summer and see that I had lost, some more kids. So I started teaching at Ellington after school by myself, and my kids all came. But then it became an issue with the school system and
With the
whatever.
administration.
So Bobby Felder had introduced us to Reverend Stanley, A. Knighton Stanley at People's Church, and who invited us to join the church. And he found a clothes closet in the church and cleaned it out and put a carpet on the floor. He said, okay, so you can teach your kids here. And that's when we moved to that. And we've been there ever since.
And it's free. And we knew when we started it had to be free because the haves and have nots.
Well, I had to work, and here's some of the concept of the Institute. I had to work at Arby's, so that means I couldn't practice and I couldn't play
That's right.
because I was working 10 hours a day trying to buy a horn. So when we decided to build the Institute, I wanted it to align with the Summer Youth Employment Program because Calvin Jones from UDC actually allowed me to understudy with him at Bacchus Junior High at their arts program. And that was done through the Mayor's Summer Youth Employment Program. And
Marion Barry's, right?
Marion Barry's,
Yes.
yep, Summer Youth Employment Program. And so that whole concept, I wanted to make sure that any kid who wanted to, because I knew I wanted to be a musician in the third grade.
But you also knew you had to bring some money home.
Right. So I had that opportunity to work. At that time, before Bacchus Junior High, which is where I did work with Calvin Jones, my first job with Marion Barry's Summer Youth Employment Program was emptying trash cans at the government printing office. So that didn't help. That took away from the time and things to practice. So when I decided to decided to start the Institute, I wanted to align ourselves with that so that the kids because we knew we had to work with them during the summer because they're all busy in school, all year long. So we became a host site for the Summer Youth Employment Program so we could tell the kids that you can you get paid and you get paid to learn. And that's what,
So did you leave Ellington?
No, I didn't leave Ellington because of that. I left Ellington because I had been 42 years in the school system.
Well, no,
Oh,
No, we were still running WJAI while he was still
yeah,
at
we were doing
Ellington.
them both at the same time. Washington Jazz Arts Institute turns 29 this year, so they overlapped.
And a lot of the kids came from Ellington as well.
Well,
it
let's
just
start.
sounded
Yeah.
like when you were talking about doing stuff after school and not wanting to do it during the day when your students were killed, it sounded like you had left Ellington to.
No, no, I was no. I would leave for the summer because
No,
I
he-
didn't teach. I didn't teach during the summer at that time.
Yeah.
That's what triggered me into teaching during the summer, so I could know where the kids were during the summer.
Oh, okay, I see.
And I think he was speaking also of when he grew up that he had to do stuff after school, keeping him from
Studying.
studying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. And many of the kids get lost in the summer.
Yeah.
That's when stuff happens.
Stuff happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I love my community. I was brought up by my community, and you can hear in our conversation how much of an impact, positive impact, because all of the musicians that I worked with and ran, they were all embracing. They were all super, super, super supportive. Roberta Flack was my homeroom teacher, and she, the band director there, because again, I'm playing mostly by ear, so I'm imitating what I hear them. And he was in my 8th grade year, the band director left, and Arthur Capehart, I just love the man to death now, but he came and he taught different. And you know how 8th graders are, they know everything. So he didn't teach like Arnold Danoff, who was the other band director. And so I told him he was wrong. And we got into a nice argument, and I quit. And I went to sit in that you couldn't be out in the halls in the school. So I went to my homeroom because Roberta Novacell at that time she was in her room, and that was my homeroom. So I went in there not to get in trouble, and I'm mad and I'm pouting and everything. And she asked me what was wrong, and I told her what happened, and I'll never forget her saying this. She says, "So you gonna let somebody that you're only going to have to deal with for a year stop you from your dreams? You want to be a musician?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, you're going to let this guy you're only going to have to see for the rest of this year wreck your dreams for the rest of your life." And didn't make sense. And of course, I said that, and she said, "Well, just go in there and apologize. You don't have to deal with him in a year. Just do what he says do for a year, and then you're gone. It's over." Psychology 101. And so that's, basically how that happened.
Another thing about the older musicians I'd like to mention is that even those who were indulging, they were always on us not to.
Not to, exactly.
They would say, "You don't want to do that." It was pretty amazing. Even those that you knew were doing their thing, they said, "Nah, you don't want to do that."
And that they would go, when I was working in the clubs, they would go to the barmaid and tell them he cannot have any alcohol. He gets cranberry juice, orange juice, and ginger ale.
Did you two get to work with Roberta Black professionally at all later?
I didn't get to work
not.
with her professionally. I played Mr. Henry's many times with the Stanley Woodruff trio, and Stanley Woodruff, and like I said, Sandy Patton. But I did meet, how I met Steve.
Steve never saw her.
Yeah,
Ex-husband who's still
right. He would pick her up from Rabot Junior High, which is where I went, Louis Charles Rabot. And he pulls up, her door was right by the back door of the school. I mean, her classroom was by the back door of the school. So we had gotten into this routine where, school campuses were closed, but I lived a block up the street. So she would let me out the back door and I could go home and eat, and my mom would fix my lunch, as long as she could fix something for me to bring back
Yeah.
to her. And my mom made a mean meatloaf. And I liked mustard on the meatloaf. She liked mayonnaise on. I mean, I just think about the conversations and things that we had. Yeah. But Steve would pick her up in this green psychedelic, and I say psychedelic because it had the little flowers on it,
That sounds like
Volkswagen
Steve.
Beetle
So much like it.
with the scroll of the bass hanging out the window. And we've been friends ever since.
Did the Jazz Arts Institute graduate out of the closet of the church?
No, we're still there now. We've been offered. This is before Trump, before the threat of moving the sports teams out of the city. There's a group of developers that won the bid to renovate the Reeves Center at 14th and U, and they offered to build us a facility in that. So that was on its way, but then those other things have happened.
Those other things happen, yeah.
Those projects have gone down the priority list. Hopefully they'll come back. So it's still there. I mean, they still want to bid. We just have to wait until it evolves.
And
But
that's
we don't
been
want
a
to
few
stop.
years. But we're still at People's Church
And we don't
in
plan to
that
leave.
same area, but we spread out all over the building.
Now,
And we do.
I'll tell you, my dream for the Institute is that we have a plant in every quadrant of the city, so that, again, the young people don't have to travel forever, because that's practice time.
Yeah.
To get to spend as much time getting to you and going home as they do, getting some lessons in. So the U Street idea was great because it was close by Metro Center. At least that made it a little easier. But I really like to see what we're doing, and what we're doing free to the public, because everybody doesn't have the resources to be buying musical instruments and paying for lessons and all those things.
And the community has been very supportive of us. We really struggled early on. We spent our own money for a lot of what we were doing. But now, musicians know we're doing it. They'll go dig out their old instruments.
Yeah.
When Nap Turner died,
Gloria gave me
got
one of
his
his basses.
basses.
When
Peter got,
Louis Powers, his wife, gave us both of his instruments.
yeah. So
Joe Harris, Bill Harris's son, passed, and we got one of his, and we turn them over. We either get them repaired and give them to the students when they leave, because we know that, okay, at this point with what we're doing with you, we're making you do this. You're going to be serious, and so when they get ready to go to college, if their folks can't get them an instrument, then
and you have to have an instrument.
Yeah.
You can't just leave it here when you go home. You need to have one. So yeah, we do that as well. So
When did you two start performing here?
ooh.
the two
Arnold
of
Sterling
us.
was still The first
What,
time
here
that I
at
did,
Westminster?
Westminster.
Oh, shoot.
Well, now see, I go all the way back to Let 'Em Play and the
Yeah.
Left Bank Jazz Society because
Well, let's talk about that.
the
Well, let's talk about Left Bank.
well, Left Bank.
Who was that? What's this guy's name?
Well, Arnold was there. That's where I met Arnold.
No, but the head of the Left Bank Jazz Society.
Oh, come on, Dave. No, you're talking about the head of Let 'Em Play.
Tony Taylor.
Yeah,
Oh no, you
No.
were no Tony. Yeah, Tony was
Let him play.
Left Bank.
let him play. No,
I know you. We
you
just
know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, because even in the documentary, somebody didn't mention his last name, but did mention
Yeah,
him for
I can't think of his
Yeah,
name.
we hold a whole bunch of stuff in there.
Yeah.
We can know that.
Uh-huh. And what about the older guy?
That's
Come on, light skinned, bald headed. Oh gosh, I can't.
Charlene Jazz Society.
Yeah, there was Charlotte Jazz Society
There
as
was
well.
Charles and Linda Cassell.
Yeah, but I can't
But
think of.
what got us down here, and Dick was here, but I'm looking at his face. I'm mad at myself now. And he'll come. Like I said, he'll come as soon as I leave here.
Was his name Ernie? Or Ernie something?
Vernon Welsh.
Nope. Bonnie said Ernie, but
Let him play though.
that's what I'm saying.
You said Tony Taylor, but it's
No,
not
they're
him.
the same era, but this
Two
is not
different
it.
people.
But he wasn't the one that brought me here. One of the groups that
No, I
was
was
playing.
thinking of Left Bank.
Oh, Left Bank. Left Bank. I got involved with Left Bank when I studied with Sonny Stitt because Sonny used to play there. And
Sonny was based here for.
oh yeah, well yeah, he moved from New York here. But I first started studying with him when he was in New York, and then he moved down. Matter of fact, he lived Burkton Drive in Hyattsville, Maryland, and that's why I took my lessons there. And I got that financed by the National Endowment for the Arts. They had a study grant. You could study with whoever you wanted. So I studied some with Sonny and some with Frank West.
And I took voice from Sonny Stitt's father in New York,
Edward Boatner.
Professor Edward Boatner. And we didn't even realize the connection.
Yeah, right, exactly. We didn't know the connection with Bill Harris either because I was in Bill Harris's band.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can't live in D.C. and not cross paths soon.
For sure.
So you had been working with Tony Taylor and Let him play, or
I didn't work with Tony. He
What
more
was that man's name?
with Tony Taylor. It was more on U Street, the Bohemian Caverns, and when it got resurrected, and then that's another whole story. There's several stories on that one, but
for how you got to Westminster first.
yeah, working with artists when it first started, and Dick, I worked with Dick a lot, with a lot of these
A
artists.
lot of
I
different
worked-
groups, including Bobby Felder.
Yeah, Bobby Felder, Jesse Adams, who was my high school band director, the guy who had played at Jackie Lee's Lounge. There was Jimmy McPhail from Jimmy McPhail's Gold Room over on Bladensburg Road. All these guys were
Yeah,
teachers.
Jimmy.
And so I would run into him, and Bobby helped a lot with that. And the word of mouth, hey, Davey Yarborough saxophone player if you need a front man for the trio or something like that. And I don't know but I can't remember what my first gig was here, but once I started playing, we started coming back, and Dick played, and I knew Dick, of course, definitely because he sang with all these same groups with Hilton Felton, he recorded with Hilton, and so once I got down there, we would call it back, from time to time, and eventually we would call back together. And that was, like I said, that was.
I can't even.
When did they start?
99.
Well, probably wasn't. He started that was Ellington's
25
centennial.
years ago.
Maybe that was one of the ways that because when the centennial, I did a recording with Cyril and Hannah live at Montpelier.
Montpelier.
And also that might have been the year that they had the International Association for Jazz Education conference here, and I had the DC unit here. I was president of the DC unit here, and so when Westminster opened, it just became
It
one
had to
of
be
those
the early
places.
2000s when
Yeah.
we first came down here as a group.
What is the placement to you?
What Westminster? It was a way to play with the community, play for the community. It was a way to play with the elders who got us to where where we were. It was a way to make sure that this is a place where they could go where it was safe, and they would come, and it was an opportunity to play for them, and without it being super expensive, because when you're playing at the Kennedy Center or Arena Stage and all of these things were absorbent, and
I like-
seniors, retired seniors had two things going against them. One, a lot of them on a fixed budget. The other was we didn't want to keep them out too late, and this was over at 9. It would start at 6, so even if they left early, but they would have an opportunity to get live jazz.
I love the community of musicians.
Yeah.
Come down here, you see everybody. It's like if they're not gigging, they would be here most of the time, and then you'd see people you haven't seen in ages, and you would never have the opportunity to see them or even hear them because you're gigging at the same time. So then when you're off, you just kind of come through here, and you kind of run into people. So I love the community of of musicians. There is a strong music community in DC, and a strong way back community too as well that we all.
Earl Banks.
Earl Banks.
I
You
told
know
you
that
would come,
name?
and just this back there in the file.
Name's familiar.
Earl Banks. Yeah, he was.
But then I was also playing with Bobby Felder's big band at that time too,
Mm-hmm.
and they used to, they've been coming out here forever.
Yes.
But I know your former student Ben Williams only played his first headlining gig here last year or 2 years ago or something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Have you also brought the students here
Oh, several
in the same way?
that I
You
was
might
brought
bring
in.
them en masse to see when you'd be like, all right, we're going to Westminster.
No, we just send them down. But by that time, the kids would navigate.
Down there.
Yeah. And,
Subway
but they
kids.
came down and sat in. I remember Herb Scott. Oh man, what was that young kid that real young kid that we met at the DC at the East Coast Jazz Festival?
Trumpet guy?
Little
trumpet.
saxophone, clarinet. Because I gave him an alto. He was a clarinet
Yeah,
player.
yeah.
Miles Davis was
Miles
his name.
Davis. That's
And-
true.
And so we brought him down and let him. When he graduated, because he was from California, and his parents sent him here to stay with an aunt so he could go through the institute. But we had him play. But he came back. He was at Berkeley by then, and he came back and sat in with us. And woo! But yeah, we would have. Again, it's another safe place. So the parents would bring their kids, especially if we were playing. But just, I say, go see some live jazz. That's the perfect environment for them.
It's keeping the music alive.
Exactly.
So Westminster does. It helps keep the music alive.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, hey, memory
Thank
lane.
you. Yeah. We could sit here with you all day, but I know you can't.
And I knew you wouldn't get all of the story.
Yeah, there's
about
plenty
story.
more to
We-
say.
yeah, it's a
Plenty
lot.
more. When I think, as you're talking, you're thinking of all kind of other stuff too. That just,
Well, I also want to be respectful of your time.
All right.
yeah.
okay.
Was it? Oh my gosh!
It's
Yeah, you're gonna-
above 4 right now.
Wow.
Wow. Well, you'll be on the editing.
Oh no, these get posted whole.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh,
Where do you
cool.
post them?
And it'll be through the DC Public Library.
Oh,
Oh.
great.
Okay.
Great. And there
So
we go.
anyone can watch the video, listen to the recording, read the transcript.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Now, have you seen our the documentary that WJAI created?
I don't think
In their own words, it was aired on
On
February
WHUT.
2nd on WHUT.
You
And
can find it on
You can find it
YouTube.
on YouTube now too.
In their own words.
But it's about the jazz legends. You hear, I had my students interview people like Steve Novosel, Rusty Hassan, Keith Kilgore, Warren
A
Shad.
lot of those
Yeah.
names we mentioned
And,
are in the film.
So, okay, see what I mean?
Yeah.
All right.
right.
Well, thank you for inviting us, and
Thank you.
we'll.
I need two hands. You can help me up. Thank you.